Do you know if you made a difference when it comes to the planning of your holistic legacy? I'd like to welcome Chad Cooper to the Design Your Legacy podcast this lovely morning. Well, welcome, Chad.
Good day, because we don't know what time it is for some people right now.
Oh, okay. Well, I'm out on here on the West Coast, and are you joining from Florida or are you outside of the United States?
I suffer from palm trees and blue skies of Florida every day. Yes.
Okay.
It's a suffering, but I do it for others.
Oh, that's wonderful. Would you share a little bit in terms of breaking the ice with the listeners? I know I read a little bit about your life on the bio on your website, but from your own perspective, would you share a little bit personally or professionally?
About me or
Yes, yes, to break the ice with the listeners. Who is Chad Cooper?
sure. So I'm HR inappropriate, so we'll see how that plays out today. When you're designing your legacy, I would say a lot of people probably are actually people that are willing to kind of flex the lines and challenge HR. And that's really kind of been a bit of my legacy in my life is, as George Bernard Shaw said, and I think it was Bobby Kennedy popularized, some people see things as they are and ask why. Others dream of things that have never been and ask why not. So my life has pretty much been a why not kind of person because I have a very large family. I have six brothers, four sisters. I had four parents. I've had the unique opportunity to take the best of every one of those family members and discard the stuff that I don't want. That allowed me to go into the Marine Corps as one of the youngest of the family as a mama's boy, and they turned me into what it means to be a man at that stage. It wasn't
Or a
the
killing machine, they say.
well, machine, yeah, it wasn't the end stage, but it certainly took me out of adolescence and innocence and turned me into responsibility and understanding character and brotherhood and those kind of things. Took that into the corporate world or into university where I had a lot of fun at school. And that's one of the aspects I feel Angelina is missing in our universities today is where's the play? Where's the fun? You're going to spend the rest of your life being serious. Why aren't you going off and having some fun in the process? I had a lot of fun. And then I went off into the corporate world, retired at 35 to be Mr. Mom. So I was the guy that actually financially could afford to walk away from a small little computer company called Microsoft. May have heard of it before. I think they're doing okay these days. And had a fantastic marriage, raised a wonderful son, empty nester, and now in that time, some of the things you saw, financial advisor, elected official, and coach for 18 or 19 years that I've been doing that for some of the top performers in the world. So that brings us to today.
Yes, that's wonderful. Thank you for sharing. And I did have an opportunity to look at your LinkedIn bio and profile, and you have been coaching for a number of years, but I think you also had a thirst to go back and recreate the stories that you wanted to tell yourself, because I also watched the video on your website. So let me transition, if I may, over to a professional relationship that you had with Tony Robbins, good old Anthony Robbins. And
Yes.
I shared with you in the preamble that I used to know and work with a gentleman by the name of Dan Lear. He was out of Manhattan Beach, California, USA, and he had worked with Tony Robbins. And I was just curious, what was one of the most valuable things that you walked away with? Because I know he, similar to many celebrities like Britney Spears, they have to perform the same set of songs in Las Vegas or wherever they do their show,
Yeah.
in his scenario all around the world. Regarding specific workshops and seminars, Date with Destiny, etc. So, what was the most valuable tool or insight?
Ironically, and this might sound a little strange, but I already had a coaching practice, and I was kept a small coaching practice because my primary role was being dad. And that allowed me to kind of have an ancillary, something for myself, something that brought in some income that brought in a lot of income for the amount of time that I worked. I was invited into partnering with Tony's organization, and I rose up through the ranks of that organization, and I was really privileged to work with some of his top clients, billionaires, professional athletes, Olympians, etc. And the way that I did that is I approached the coaching director and I simply asked a question. I said, what do I need to do in order to have the opportunity and privilege to work with these caliber of clients. And they said nobody's asked. Everybody's felt that they were entitled. Everybody felt like it was a matter of time that they, should just be given these. They said nobody actually asked, hey, does the floor need to be swept? What do I need to do to learn and build up the skill set? And so because of that, I believe I was given that opportunity. And it was a great run, and we had a wonderful experience.
So
But
what was the answer?
the answer to the oh what
Oh, so
to
you didn't have to sweep the floors, although that's very
no
Marine Corps. Yeah.
yes
So the
um I just had to be a student. I had to learn Tony's method, right? So I came in from a school called Coach for Life. And in that coaching, it's very different than probably 99% of the other coaching certification organizations out there. In professional life coaching, they have four tenets, and 99% of them teach physical, logical, and emotional. And they avoid the spiritual like it's the plague. And so, what that organization did is it took spiritual and said it's like a beet on a salad. When you put a beet on a salad, it bleeds throughout the whole salad and you can't get it out. And so, I came into Tony's organization with that unique foundation of that's where we lead. That's the foundation of all of the other pieces. So I had to then learn to put some of that to the side and actually understand Tony's process for coaching. Tony's a high performance coach, and Tony is all about take action in order to get results. So that's the physical, the logical, and the emotional. So what I was able to do was complement and understand that these billionaires, these professional athletes, will often come because something's not right. Something's missing in their life. And that thing that's missing most often is spiritual. And so I was able to come in and fit in an area that other people weren't trained, other people weren't comfortable being able to serve in that capacity. So that played into the longevity with my clients, the satisfaction with my clients. But ultimately, Tony and I went separate ways, and I want to say 2016, and just decided to go do other things. But I would say that was really the distinction that I came from was two different schools of coaching and how to meld and complementarily integrate them. And it really has allowed me in my coaching practice to get away from the either or, right? I can either have material attainment or spiritual enlightenment to yes and. I can be spiritually enlightened and abundant in all aspects of my life, materially, relationally, financially, physically, etc. So what I was able to really do is something unique, and that's able to say, don't fall for the trap of this or that.
Yeah,
Choose
absolutely.
both.
Yeah, it's like being able to use both our right and our left brains, the hemispheres. One of the things we had chatted about in the preamble is you had mentioned a group out of New Zealand and the priority for spirituality that oftentimes doesn't always get brought over to the West.
So part of the oldest indigenous Maori tribe in New Zealand, a tribe called the Waitaha. And one of the elders said the problem that we see with the Western world today is you have a bunch of gurus doing spirituality instead of being spiritual. And so we see that in a lot of performers that are out there, and maybe they've got good intention, but that spiritual piece is what is missing in terms of their beingness. So one of the things that I help clients and help others with is that when you wake up every day, instead of getting out of bed and grabbing one of these things, right? That's what most
Mhm.
of us do, is to actually just ask yourself, who am I going to be regardless of whatever it is that I'm going to do?
And you just lifted up your cell phone for the listeners. Keep going.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we really have a responsibility. Think about this if you were to put on a play in Broadway. You have to memorize the script, but you have to set your stage before the performance goes up. But how many of us get up in the morning and we don't set our stage? We don't actually take a minute and ask about our beingness. And that's really what my tribe is talking about is we have a responsibility to address our beingness before we go about our doingness. And in that process, I wake up and I begin with a prayer. May peace begin with me, and may I begin with peace. And then I go through the fruit of the Spirit, which are 9 characteristics. And so by doing that, my goal is regardless of whatever unfolds for me in the day, Angelina, I choose to be peace. So instead of fighting for peace, maybe we should just be peace.
Yeah, thank you for speaking into that insight. I think that this idea of bridging those two worlds and weaving them together is brilliant because a lot of the times I've known spiritually enlightened people that are just above the poverty line or very successful people in the world, and yet they live empty lives of loneliness sitting by themselves on balconies. Yes,
Absolutely.
yes.
Yeah.
So let me go back for a moment. And I did also want to clarify that you had referenced an acronym HR at the very beginning. I believe that stands for Human Resources.
Yes.
Yes, just in case for any listeners outside the United States. But let me transition for a moment as you were building your mindset. One of the things you said is suffering is the stories we create about our pain. And I wondered if you would, just for a moment, this lovely morning, if you would share maybe five of the most difficult challenges that you had to overcome, and then how did you get to the other side regarding growth? And I know that there could be like a lot to unpack there. So if you want to just maybe touch on one, you can, or if you want to cover all five lightly, you also can do that for the listeners.
Sure. I'm not sure if I'll come up with five, but we'll give it a shot here. I would say the one that stands out first for me is becoming a United States Marine is a painful process. They're going to chip away and remove everything that they can in order to then rebuild you. And that's a painful process. And that was really the first experience where I realized that pain is part of the process for any level of success. If you want to have any kind of chance of legacy, any kind of impact, it's probably going to include pain. But we also want to look at that like a really good cookie recipe.
You're talking
Make
about
the
growing
pain,
pains?
pardon?
Are you talking about growing pains?
It could be mental, it could be spiritual, it could be physical, it could be, emotional. So when we look at pain, the process of losing somebody that you love, the process of losing a pet, perhaps the process of losing a job, or the process of building an empire or building your body as a professional athlete or an Olympian or building your financial empire, all are going to require moments of pain, both physically, logical, and emotionally and spiritually, right?
It's it sounds like
So
we're going beyond our comfort zone then,
we have to.
in order to attain more, be more, etc.
Yes, that's the trick. So when you look at in the Marine Corps, they're going to push you beyond your comfort zone. That's the entire point. But they have a very deliberate and a very effective process over 13 weeks in the boot camp portion to well, I shouldn't say gently, to methodically take you along. So the trick is to do a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of discomfort, a little bit of discomfort until we get to a large area where we can be comfortable being uncomfortable. So if we can just a little bit grow in our discomfort, that becomes the norm, and then we can withstand storms. So when we have some of the challenges today of people who are struggling with trauma or discomfort, it's because they really haven't put themselves in a position where they're allowing themselves to be uncomfortable on a continual basis to grow that comfort zone.
Yes, thank you for speaking into that. I'm going to make a bridge over to legacy planning for a moment. There's going to be one of the largest wealth transfers that's going to happen in the next so many years. I think the wealth transfer is like, I don't know, $27 trillion or something, some large amount. I don't have the exact number in front of me. And I think about the individuals who are widows that didn't have to be week in and week out handling the legal and financial paperwork. And it's not just that, but it's the emotional stuff that goes with it. And I compare it to the metaphor of asking them to go out on a yacht for some type of boat racing trip. And they are going to be so overwhelmed. And then we wonder, well, why did they lose it all?
Yeah. Yeah, we know statistically people who win the lottery, people who play the lottery and then win the lottery lose like 80% of them lose it within, I think, 3 years. Why? Because Maslow's hierarchy of needs tells us we have survival, stability, success, significance. And if we skip a layer, if we go from survival to success, we are incongruent in our identity and we will self sabotage. That's why people lose their money. That's why when we go from a dinghy to a speedboat, we will crash it because we have to go from survival to stability and then from stability to success. If we skip the meat, we're incongruent in our identity, and the human condition has to be congruent with its identity. And we either change our identity or we will sabotage. And so
Interesting.
in that process, pain in small doses is actually a required ingredient. But we want it to be like this, the amount of ratio of salt in a cookie, not the amount of flour or sugar. And when we do that, we can go from a dinghy rowboat to maybe a small motorboat to a sailboat to a speedboat eventually, right? Or in a car, we go from a bicycle to a go-kart to a regular car to maybe a sports car to then a Formula One vehicle. We want that growth to have a trajectory so that we can get comfortable being uncomfortable in microdoses.
Yeah, absolutely. Before you could probably handle it in the high seas, but you've had that training every year to
I
know,
do.
yeah,
I
to
grew
know
up
like, yeah,
I
if a
grew up
storm,
that way, actually.
yeah,
So I grew up on the Great Lakes, which can be extremely treacherous, actually. And I've been in some very bad storms, but I learned to acclimate small so that when we, would sail overnight and you can't see land on either side, and there's a storm that comes up, you can respond instead of react.
yeah, brilliant. And by the way, I never knew that the Great Lakes could have gigantic like hurricane type storms until I saw them on YouTube.
Oh yeah, those they've shrunk large freighters, absolutely.
Okay, so your website speaks about a legendary life, and you've defined it on your website. And so I'd like to take it a step further and ask you, how do you define a legendary legacy?
I would say defining a legendary legacy is as unique as our fingerprint. The path that we will take is going to be unique to each individual, but the obstacles that we will face are relatively common to all. And so the question is at the end of that destination, when we will arrive, kind of like Ronald Reagan said, some people wonder all their lives whether they made a difference. The Marine Corps doesn't have that problem, right? The question is did you make a difference? And the question is what kind of difference did you make? I think it was Tim Tebow said the greatest tragedy is that we spend our lives making a significant impact on the things that don't matter, right? So did you design your legacy? Or did you just kind of, you just kind of wandered and stumbled upon something? So it begins with the premise of destination. Did you actually look at where do I want to end up by a certain time frame? I mean, we do this all the time when we go to the grocery store, or we go on a vacation, or we go from LA to Hawaii. We have to design what our destination is. And so that requires us to be clear what that means. And so a legacy for me was being able to write my first book. And somebody said, how do you know when it's a success? I said, as long as it changes one person's life, I will consider that to be successful in a legacy, right? So often in the Angelina, we think, oh, we have to make a global impact. Says who? Maybe if you just change one person's life for the better, that you've actually created a legacy, right? So a legacy could be choosing to just smile to everybody that you meet. Could simply be peace. A legacy can also be maybe a foundation that lasts multiple generations, or for 1,000 years. It's really as unique as each individual. The question is, did you do it with intent, and did you actually get there?
Yeah, I think what you're talking about is checking in versus checking out of life.
Yes. Are you a
Yeah.
participant or are you an observer? Right. A lot of us look at if our life was played back as a movie and thrown up on a movie screen, would we be the main actor or would we be a supporting actor?
Well, it's so interesting. I think with so you're very committed to and disciplined regarding your life, especially to retire at age 35 from Microsoft. But there are some individuals when I look out into the world, they have just it's I it yeah, they've it's like apathy has like come over when I see them behind the wheel in traffic next to me.
I have been a very driven purpose. of person in life. I am what you would call a type A recovery. I tried this type B lifestyle. It doesn't stick for me. It doesn't work. I'm somebody that needs to be in movement, needs to be active. But I've gotten far more purposeful about what that is and how that unfolds. And so I would say I've moved in life from force energy. Like in the Marine Corps, we know how to use force, right? In a corporation, they know how to use force. And don't get me wrong, you can get a lot of results with force, but it comes at the expense of something else. Maybe a relationship, maybe your physical health, maybe your marriage kind of thing. And I've learned to actually let go and discover that the way to ascend is actually through surrender. And so I've also
Mm,
learned the value of being still, in that
interesting.
being still may actually be of more value than simply being busy. Because being busy without a purpose, right? Growth for the sake of growth is the ideology of a cancer cell. So, what is it that you want to grow into? We saw that in New York City in Times Square back in the 80s when they had a ton of empty storefronts and they filled them with a bunch of seedy adult stores. And it really created a lot of crime and problem for the city. Then they looked at it and said, oh, we need disciplined growth. We need discernment in our growth. And now you have Times Square, which is a tourist attraction and destination because they were thoughtful in that process. So when we look at legacy, when we look at our doingness, are we like an octopus on roller skates? There's a lot of movement, but not in any focused direction. Or are we actually taking a pause, being still and saying, I want to create impact, but let me think about what kind of impact. Maybe it's a negative impact, maybe it's a positive impact. So I found that actually slowing down, it's kind of like a nice bottle of wine. You have to open it and let it breathe to really allow all the flavor to come through.
Yeah, that's a great story about Times Square. I know that it's a tourist destination specifically on New Year's Eve night as the place to be in the world that night for
Yeah.
that moment of time. So, speaking about your life's legacy, what are you most emotionally connected to?
Most emotionally connected to?
Your
Um,
website talked about this theme and idea of what it is we are emotionally connected to. And I thought, well, that's interesting because you're almost like, I think about like the latest Top Gun movie, you're like the alpha male in that sense. And yet you have the capacity to speak about what is it that we are emotionally connected to, because when we are connected to those things in the heart space, then we care.
I would say to actually be aware of the full spectrum of emotions. So, being a member of a very large family, one of my brothers is a very talented graphic artist. And I was looking at something he was doing one day, and I said, that's a really nice blue. He goes, that's not blue. I said, oh, don't be a smart aleck. It's clearly blue. He goes, no, I'm not being seriously. And he pulls out this palette of colors and he opens it up and he said, look, this is periwinkle, this is baby blue, this is royal blue, this is navy blue. And yes, a Marine knows that periwinkle is a blue. Okay. But it hit me like a ton of bricks. It was an epiphany. And I went, that emotions are like a palette of color. As a former Marine, I was happy, sad, and pissed. And what I realized is that there's shades of emotion, and our society will tell on social media that it's okay for us to display this set of emotions, but we must hide these other emotions. And I say, this is why HR doesn't like me, is that's a bunch of hogwash. We have a responsibility to express and connect to the full spectrum of emotions. So some of these darker emotions that we might be having, because maybe we're having a mental health day, right? We lost a pet and we're depressed or we're melancholy. Yes, I know what that word is, right? Or we're sad. We don't allow ourselves to be okay not being okay. And so I help people understand there's days where you may wake up and go, I think I'm not okay today, and I'm going to allow that to be okay. Now, we have a responsibility to let other people know so that we aren't rude or disrespectful or taking that out on other people. but to maybe go into solitude and allow ourselves to sit with what are these emotions that I'm struggling with. Because what that's doing is it's a megaphone saying, pay attention. Something needs to change. So you need to either stop doing something or start doing something. You put your hand on a stove and it's hot, you got to take it off because your body's telling you stop it, right? So, what am I most emotionally connected to? Helping people understand the full spectrum of emotions allows us to actually better comprehend and better serve our purpose. Our purpose is not a title. Our purpose is not how much money is in the bank or what zip code we live or what the badge is on a purse or the hood of our vehicle. Our purpose is how we want to feel on a day-to-day basis.
Yeah, I was thinking about there's almost something about permission that in your life's legacy, it's like you're offering others the full permission to be in their full myriad of emotions.
Yes.
Like there's enough space for all of them.
And when we do that in the microdoses, it might be uncomfortable, it might even be painful, but the stories about the pain are what causes suffering. And if we allow ourselves to sit with what is this emotion? What are the stories that I'm creating underneath it? When we do that in microdoses, when the big events happen, they might be painful, but they won't destroy us. And we're able to grow from them.
Yeah, absolutely. I do. I find it interesting. You're almost inviting your clients into new territory, even if it's just emotionally.
Absolutely. I
There,
just
there,
helped a client with literally a capacity. Like, should I slow down or should I take on more? And it was an issue of, well, I understand you just lost your mother. Yeah. Have you gone through the 7 stages of grief? What are those?
mhm.
So it was an opportunity to say, have you actually allowed yourself to grieve? So we often go, oh, I know what that emotion is, but we don't necessarily actually emote.
Well, I think it's interesting again and brilliant that you're allowing that permission to feel because if not in society, it's almost as if we're invited to be consumers and customers, and then it ends there, unless we
Correct.
seek more. And then people wonder, well, why does my day feel like Groundhog Day? Because you have to seek more. I think before I go on to my next question, I think there's a quote, and I don't know if it's tied to Oprah Winfrey or whoever, but it was talking about being a reader, and those who read get to live 1,000 lives. And I think it's the same thing with emotions that if you can step into a variety of different emotions beyond the three you talked about, happy, sad, or pissed, that then a world beyond just the four corners of our 3D reality opens up.
Absolutely. We are designed to live, not to merely exist. And that requires us then to have a relationship first and foremost with ourselves. And that begins with looking at our emotions, how we are feeling.
Yeah, that, lovely. And I think that is incredibly important given, again, today's fast-paced world, the inflation, the ability to slow down and to actually acknowledge what's there compared to escape or numb out and medicate.
Yeah, one of the ways that I do that, just as somebody's like, how would I get started? I'm known as a nomad. I love to wander. Okay. So when I go travel somewhere, I'm notorious with, if I go to New Zealand, they're like, who's this guy wandering around? Oh, he's one of ours. Don't worry about him. Right. But what I do is like, if I'm in Venice, you can get lost in Venice, Italy so quickly. And I just wander because it's such a wonderful place to wander. New York City, love to just wander. And then with this invention of technology, I'll just put in an earbud, one earbud, and go to my phone for GPS and say, take me back to where I came from. And it allows me to do that, to be present and to just allow myself to go through the flow of experiencing emotions and the feelings as they come across different scenes and be safe, safe in the process of not looking like a tourist. So how many of us allow ourselves the space to just exist in be?
Yeah, and in awe of what's in front of us.
Yes.
Yeah. You've written a book titled Time Isn't the Problem. You are, which is a very confrontational title. So after retiring at age 35, why did you write this book in terms of why does the content matter?
So first of all,
Because
you
you could have
nailed
done
it.
anything.
Pardon me?
Because you could have done anything.
I could.
So why
It was a
care?
very selfish ambition is where it began. The
Okay.
book has actually changed to Time Isn't the Problem because the ending was too in people's face. The whole point of Time Isn't the Problem, you are, is if you can't admit that you're part of the problem, then you can't understand and see that you're also part of the solution, right? Is if we have the maturity and the ability to set aside our ego, we can say we contributed to the situation we're in, which also means we have the ability to get resourceful to get ourselves out of that situation. So I put myself in a situation where at 19 or 18 years old, I said, here's what I want to accomplish by the age of 40. Well, I did it at the age of 35. And what happened is what I call the Apollo moon landing syndrome. Very few people know that most of the astronauts in the Apollo missions suffered from severe depression. And the reason for that is once you go to the moon, how do you top that, right?
Hmm.
How many people got to go to the moon? A handful. There's nothing left to accomplish. And I noticed the same behavior in Olympians. You have Olympians that get the gold medal in their early 20s and they age out. Many of them don't have university degrees. Many of them don't have a profession. They have fully committed. They've got a full life ahead of them. Holy crap, what do I do? Well, I hit 35, retired, accomplished everything I wanted to, and went, holy crap, what am I going to do? And I found myself with some mental health sadness and in depression. And so the result of the book was me being selfish to say, I need to reverse engineer what did I do over basically 20 years? Can I replicate that? And I said, if I'm going to do this, I might as well make it available for other people. This is a template that is repeatable. So it became a book.
Well, I think that what's interesting about that is money was probably no longer your goal after you made your money. So then the question becomes, well, now what?
Money has always been, I've had a very healthy relationship with money, and money was never really the goal. Money was complementary. And often we make money with the illusion that it's going to complete us or that it's going to allow ourselves to be enough. And I understood that it was never going to do anything but complement me. As Tony Robbins said, the best way to help the poor is to not be poor yourself. And so my commitment was like a teacup with a saucer. Fill the cup to overflowing, and whatever's in the saucer, give forward to others. So contribution beyond myself has always been part of my life. And so this was a way for me to contribute. And yes, the money became I'm financially secure, but I'm not satisfied. So it became I want to be able to make millions. If I can make more money and write more checks to my foundation, then I get to create more impact. So the book is really a template to help you design your legacy if that's something that you're interested in. Because once I got there, I didn't have to worry about in that, Angelina, I've got all this, but now am I enough? I was able to do it and say, this is going to complement me. It's never going to complete me.
Interesting. Many times when business owners sell their business for 20, 30 million, whatever that number is, I describe it as a metaphor of they arrive to the center of the Great Plains and they look up and around and they go, oh my gosh, I'm in a land that I have no idea how to navigate now.
Yes.
And
And
I
that's
think that,
why
go
I
ahead.
say our purpose is how we want to feel. So in the book, we actually cover the process of discovering which emotions you want to feel on a consistent day-to-day basis. And if we can design our life where the vehicles that we actually experience on a day-to-day basis are doing this, complement our beingness, we will arrive at that legacy station and not have to suffer from, oh crap, I don't recognize this. Because we're going to be surrounded in the emotions and the vehicles and the identities that complement those emotions.
Absolutely, to keep moving forward compared to growing backwards. Because
Yes.
somebody could be at that fork in the road and it's separate from their net worth, but it's still a fork in the road of do they grow forward and have enough reason to grow forward in the middle of the Great Plains when they look
Yes.
around. Yeah.
Yeah. So my goal was never to not work anymore. Retirement, I think, is really the same definition everybody really wants. It's not me sitting on a couch drinking a beer watching football, right? It's being able to do what I want to do on the time frame that I make of my own choosing. It's not sitting on a golf course for me. I mean, I have friends that are like, dude, you're busier than you ever were before you were retired. I don't see you on the golf course. I'm like, do you like playing golf? They're like, no, I suck. I said, me too. I enjoy playing, but I don't keep score. I have fun that annoys people. I don't keep score, so I enjoy doing that. But I'm not going to ever be on the PGA. So it's being able to do what I want on my terms, not somebody else's conditions.
Yeah, that freedom. Top 3 to 4 core values or aspirational values.
Um, Integris. So I have what's called the SIRV method, SIRV, right? And that stands for strength. So come from your gifts. One of the things I learned in the corporate world was that they would do these annual reviews and they're like, okay, Chad, here's where you're competent and you checked off the boxes and met the requirements. But let's talk about where you need to grow. I just don't agree with that at all. It's like I'm never going to be great at certain things. Go do the things that you were great, that you were designed and put on this planet to go do. So come from your strengths and serve. The I is the controversial piece. The I is independent, is integrous, and it is intimate. If we don't understand, Angelina, to put on our mask, our oxygen mask first, we can't go help other people. So it isn't selfish. It isn't irresponsible. It's a responsibility that if we don't come and take care of ourselves first, we can't come from our strengths. We can't serve others. So the I is actually rotating because it is about both ourselves so that we can then be something greater to serve others. The R is the resolute, right? So the value is resolute. What does resolute mean? It means you're in or you're out. It's not I'm going to try out coaching. Oh, I want more of this. It's like not one foot in or out. Burn the boats, burn the bridges. You're in or you're out. You don't do a relationship where like, oh, I'm kind of into this marriage, but I'm not. No, you're in. So resolute. If you're going to serve, serve with excellence. And then the V is vitality. So whatever you do, are you doing it from a place of vibrancy, a place of vitality, or are you doing it from a place of diminishment and making other people small or taking from other people or knocking other people down because you're intimidated or don't feel like you're enough? Do it from vitality and you can serve in a way that generates like a spring, right? A spring never lowers its level of water. So if we do it from vitality, we're like a spring of generating energy and goodness. So serve.
Yeah, thank you for speaking into that. So I know that I've got a couple more minutes with you this lovely morning. And I think you may have, I'm presuming the answer here. You'll have to tell me in a moment. But you spoke before a moment ago about a legendary legacy being the obstacles that we overcome. And my next question for you is if you were to set aside a weekend or two in the next year to design your hardcover coffee table book for your personal legacy, what images or stories would you communicate? And I almost think it's those common obstacles we all overcome, but we never talk about in terms of distilling it as if it's, obvious, as if others can read our minds.
It's a great question. And I'm sure people have given some amazing answers. But I think I would actually probably be like the Beatles' White Album, and it'd just be white. And the reason for that is that I am at a stage in life where I've been really committed to unattachment. And a lot of people don't understand what unattachment is. Desire in its Latin origin means to not have. So I can be unattached, but have a preference. So I have a preference for being abundant in all areas of my life, financially, spiritually, relationally, whatever, but I'm unattached to it. So whether I'm sitting in a penthouse or sitting in a tent, I choose happiness, right? Happiness is not an effect, it's a choice, it's an inside job. And so my album would simply be white because I'm unattached to all of the labels and the things that we define. I'll be happy when I have
Mm.
this, right? All the symbols that define that. They complement me, they don't complete me. So I'm just going to go with the white album.
So, okay. So the coffee table book will be white on the outside with blank white pages on the inside.
Sure.
Okay. Okay.
No, on the inside is all the content. And,
Okay.
and the gift and the legacy that I can offer in that is to be able to take my content, the messages that I've received from something bigger than me, what I call God, right? I'm the messenger. I'm not the message. Our tribe in New Zealand is very clear. Please don't ever elevate us to the level of guru. We are messengers of the message, which means we're flawed. So the content would be really an invitation to do my part in trying to put it in context to the sign of the times today, to be able to do something that maybe has enough wisdom that it can transcend hundreds of years or thousands of years. That that's what I would like inside the content,
Which is timeless.
which is timeless.
It's so interesting. And again, I know I've got a couple more minutes with you. I was looking the other day regarding a number of families globally that have done legacy planning well, whether they were in South America, Russia, Asia, etc. And just surprising that some of those families have been around 250 to 350 years regarding their family governance structures and the legacy plans where they looked at the bigger picture. And again, this isn't taught in school, like when you talked about the HR department and so forth. And we
Yeah,
have to almost go searching out for that information because it's not always readily available. Please go ahead.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. And I would say the content is somebody said is I don't know, I can't remember who it was. There's nothing is new under the sun, meaning there's nothing that I'm sharing or passing forward that I'm the author of. I'm not the composer. But if I look at an orchestra, I can be the conductor and make a great orchestral performance, but I don't have to take credit for the composition, right? And that's really what I would say is the content. I'm not the author, I'm not the composer, I'm simply the messenger passing it forward. And in order to do that, we have a responsibility to look at our past and see what is the sage wisdom of Marcus Aurelius, right? Or of Greek philosophers. Or one of my heroes in person I greatly admire is Ray Dalio. Ray Dalio is the most successful financial advisor in history. And Ray has made a decision to pass on some of that sage wisdom so that we don't have to make the same mistakes. And so if we look to our past, we can find that sage wisdom and put it into context today to be able to serve others. And we can do that through scripture. Where a lot of people have a problem with scripture today, but if we actually put it into context, people understand love. Love is something that should be really good and universal and is across all religions. Yeah, let's add that to the book.
Mm, lovely. What photos or images might be in the hardcover coffee table book?
I definitely have some Looney Tunes, Bugs Bunny stuff in there. Okay. Just gotta have that, gotta have some Snoopy. With happiness, I have found some of the most wise people that I've had the privilege of sitting with are some of the biggest comedians, and they have such a heart for humor. We have to laugh our way through. We can go through pain. We can get sweat on our eye, on our brows and dirt on our foreheads and fall exhausted into bed. But if we can laugh our way through it, man, does it make it worthwhile, right? So I'd have some photos that are just fun and some Mighty Python. I love that stuff. But I'd also have some stuff in there of just nature, right? I would have images in there of children laughing, of adults crying with adults and with elderly and with youth. I'd have a full spectrum that represents emotions.
That's lovely. Thank you. What's a good website for a listener to learn more about your book or your services?
Thank you. I keep it really simple. ChadECooper.com. E is an echo, ChadECooper.com. You can find all your information from me on there.
Wonderful, wonderful. We started out today's podcast with the intention of, do you know if you made a difference in the planning and design of your legacy? And I think we have fulfilled that business promise today in talking about a number of topics that you have brought up regarding how we can't skip a layer when it comes to our identity, and also being able to set the stage. And may peace begin with me, and also realizing that we need to know that clear destination of where we would like to end up in order to be checking into our legacy ideals and vision compared to checking out. And also, you spoke about regarding force energy, that we can also ascend through surrender. And it doesn't just have to be that type A, I'm going to just, break through the walls, of, but rather to be emotionally connected. So thank you so much, Chad, for your time today.
My pleasure. Thank you so much. I've very much enjoyed it.
Thank you. In closing, I'm Angelina Carleton, the hostess of the Design Your Legacy podcast, as well as the founder to Legacy Planning, a boutique advisory firm based out of Beverly Hills, California, but international in those I coach and consult. I hope to dive deep into subjects that can help a person define, develop, and execute their legacy, and continue to scour the landscape for those who can be great resources to every dimension of your legacy. For many listeners, there can never be enough education and preparation in the moot or moat around your castle. Whether you find yourself with new wealth or generational wealth, may the content on this channel be an anchor in any storms ahead. We do our best to provide original content for your intellectual and emotional curiosity. Thank you so much for joining us today. And if you're tuning in on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, or Spotify, please remember to rate and review, share with your family and friends, send an email to either Chad or myself and let us know your thoughts about today's conversation. So thank you so much for joining. And thank you, Chad, for speaking into your legacy.